You're very welcome.
Um, how long did it take to completely finish writing Below Zero?
Well, it took about, I spent 5 days locked in a meat freezer writing the actual script. But the rewrites and all the work that goes into writing a script and getting it to a point where you can produce it does take considerably longer. I don't know how long it actually took me, but it was several drafts. I was probably looking at full time, probably about 3 months of solid writing and rewriting.
When you're making a movie, writing tends to continue all the way through shooting and in the editing room and everything, if you want to think of it that way, because you're always sort of forming and molding the story. I mean, sometimes things weren't working out for budget reasons, or there were scenes with snow in the movie, but Mother Nature didn't cooperate. So writing a script and writing a movie can tend to be two completely different things.
Yeah. In fact, I that's a good point because I was writing the script right up until shooting, right up until production. We didn't have snow, so I had to do a complete rewrite on the script to reflect more of a dry, drab, yellow, rotting corpse of an environment that we were filming in instead of a white, snowy, sterile one, which is what we'd always imagined. So yes, there were definitely some big differences that we had to address because of the realities of production.
So, how many drafts of your script did you have?
Well, there's a saying about scripts are never written, they're abandoned. And I think we probably got to that point where, I also feel like I had gotten it to a point where it was the best I could do. I worked on the script really hard. And it was a tricky script because, one character in one location with a limited number of other characters to interact with, that is a real challenge to write a script like that and still keep it engaging and exciting and make it something where people still are on the edge of their seats watching. That's such a challenge for a writer, and I love that. But go ahead.
I would say it's difficult to say how many full drafts there were because sometimes you're rewriting one line or one scene or, something changes and you have to rewrite just 5 minutes of the script. In fact, we're working with our distributors right now and they're going to require a final version of the script which reflects the final edited version of the film. So there's one draft even yet to go, even though the movie's finished.
Yeah. And you rewrite the movie in the edit suite anyway. So, that job is probably the closest to writing that exists. Every time you write, when you sit down in the edit suite, you assemble the movie, and basically that whole assembly can tell a completely different story depending on how you assemble the pieces. So you really do end up rewriting it constantly, not just through the physical typing in, fade out, and everything that falls in between that, but to the edit suite and everything, and even our print materials.
What was your role on the film, Bob?
I'm a producer on the film. Signe and I have been business partners on our screenwriting conference for about 8 years. And I wound up doing a lot of the supervision and on-set sort of production while we were shooting, and then doing the general roles of a producer throughout. Our next film that we're shooting is one that I wrote. Signe and I sort of take turns. I help produce her film, and she helps produce my film.
That works. It works.
Your new film, it's Breakdown Lane, right?
Yep, that's right.
Why did you change the title?
Well, I love the title I-15, but unfortunately, that in other countries around the world, including Canada and Mexico, they don't use that naming convention for roads, for interstate highways, so that title would have been nonsensical to markets anywhere except in the U.S. So I had to change it. It was, most roads have a breakdown lane though, so it'll be more universally recognizable, and if we, whatever country we're in, if they have a different word for the breakdown lane, then it's more easy to translate.
And you were going to call it what? Highway or Dieway or something?
That you should have, man. You should have heard the hours and hours of conversations we've had. Signe and I would be driving from Calgary to Los Angeles, or from Los Angeles to New York, or from Earth to the Moon, and the whole time we're sitting there saying, "How about Zombie Road? How about Resurrection Highway? How about Dieway? How about They Come Back from the Dead and Walk Along the Highway?" Like, we were just brainstorming titles all the live long day.
How's the progress on it?
Looking good. We're looking to shoot this spring, April, May. So the wheels are turning, and I'm directing it too. So it's a question of just getting all the ducks in a row. But they're very cooperative ducks.
We actually started production in the fall. We shot for a day, put together enough materials. We're putting together a trailer right now, and it looks great. It looks really good. So we're quite excited to get going on the next one.
That's good. Who do you think will be in the cast?
Well, we have Mr. Michael Berryman, who will be playing a cameo role, and so you'll recognize his face from Below Zero and many other films, of course. And Kristin Booth, who also was the star of one of the stars in Below Zero, she will be the star in Breakdown Lane, and she's fabulous. We couldn't ask for a better actress. Just so talented and just a lovely, lovely person to work with. So we're really, really pleased with her, and she's so talented. Just adore her.
When you talk about the role of luck in making a movie, I mean, we had another actress lined up to play Penny and Paige in Below Zero, and she dropped out at the last minute. The deal just sort of fell apart. So we got lucky to find Kristin, and now here she is in the star of our next movie. I mean, she is so talented and so funny and such a great team player that and not to mention sexy and believable that she could kick a whole bunch of zombies right in the butt. She's you talk about the role of luck. I mean, now the luck on one movie has sort of rolled over into the next movie. We're really excited about it.
How did you come by like Edward Furlong for the role?
Well, we had a casting director who had connections to him. And, we always tell everyone we run a screenwriting conference in Los Angeles, and it's called the Great American Pitchfest and Screenwriting Conference. And in that event, we talk about this all the time, about how you have to use the connections you make. And a lot of times you have connections, you don't even realize what connections they have. And by tapping into the connections you have, you can often tap into the extended connections that each of us has. And that's a huge network that a lot of times we don't think we have access to. So we did use some of our own contacts to reach out and make connections that way. And then we also, the casting director was fabulous as far as getting our offer to them and actually enabling us to move forward with him attached. So it really is about using your connections, and if you don't have connections, making them and doing everything you can, just banging a lot of doors. And Eddie was fabulous. We really had a great experience working with him on this film.
I got some great advice from a friend of Signe's. His name is Fred Keating. He's an actor from up here in Canada. Terrific man and very giving with his time and his experience. And I mentioned to him how, I'm relatively new as a film producer, but I'm a long-time movie fan and movie buff, and how sometimes it's hard to sort of separate those two hats. Like, sometimes you just have to come at a problem as a fan. And he sort of reassured me. He said, never lose that. Like, the love of movies should be driving all of your decisions when you're a producer and a writer and a director, really. And let's face it, I mean, look, I'm 41 years old. Anyone who's my age who says they've never been a fan of Eddie Furlong is flat out lying to you. I mean, Terminator 2 changed the world, and Animal Factory was brilliant, and American History X was brilliant, and the opportunity to work with someone like Eddie it just really appealed to the fan in me, even more than the producer or the the writer, I didn't write this one, but I'm a writer as well. It's being able to work with people who helped you fall in love with movies in the first place is one of the real, genuine fringe benefits of this job.
You said that you wrote some of the script before you went in the freezer. How much did the temperature affect your writing?
I did go into the freezer with an outline, but what I'd mainly written was the actual movie story that you see within the film. And the challenge was I couldn't figure out the other part. I couldn't get the writer's story. I didn't even know I had the writer's story at that point. All I knew was I really liked the movie story, and I had a pretty solid feature film in that, but it was short. It was quite a bit too short. And I was trying to find a way to make it into a feature length. So locking myself in the freezer, there were a number of elements that actually influenced the script. For example, when you're in there, who would have thought this, but there was this rubber stripping on the bottom of the door, and if I pulled it, this freezer was so old and it was kind of falling apart a little bit. There was actually a little bit of a worn spot where I could actually get my fingers out a little bit, not very, very well, but I could get them just a little bit. And I thought, well, what if I could get them out more? And that influenced the scene where Eddie puts his hand under the door and ends up being attacked. Sorry for the spoiler. Mm-hmm. So that's one of those moments. Or the fact that, you're in this slaughterhouse that is completely abandoned, and you think it would be, really, really creepy and full of strange noises. And there were occasional noises, but for the most part, it was very, very peaceful. It was very quiet there. It's an abandoned slaughterhouse in the middle of nowhere. So it was great because you could really concentrate and think about your script and really get into the head of your characters. So those are just a couple of the things that influenced the script.
Yeah, when you're in a freezer surrounded by other freezers with dead animals in them, the neighbors don't make any noise at all.
And nobody comes to visit.
What inspired you to lock yourself in there to get the script wrote?
I guess what inspired me to actually lock myself in the freezer or have myself locked in the freezer was just my frustration with my own writer's block. I had a solid outline for a feature-length script, but it just wasn't long enough, and I couldn't find a way. I had been trying everything. I actually even tied myself to a chair in a hotel room to write the script, and just trying to get some others I didn't want to just make it longer for the sake of making it longer. It needed to have a solid story to it, and I just could not find a way to do that. So it really came out of my frustration and my I guess my commitment to trying to write the best story I could and find a way to turn it into a feature-length story.
Well, Signe and I tell all the writers that come to our conference and people who ask us for advice how important it is not necessarily to just move to LA and focus on the business, how important it is to bring your own experiences and your own part of the world to your stories, because that's how you can develop your own unique voice and so on. And Signe's a real big believer in research. Mm-hmm. I believe in research too, but I also like completely making stuff up because that's part of the fun of fiction. But the level of realism, of genuine experience, of verisimilitude that Signe's experience at the thing in the freezer brought to the screenplay really informs the movie very, very well. I think that if she hadn't gone into the freezer, it would have been a much better and much less engaging film.
A much better?
Or, excuse me, it would have been much worse. You know what I'm saying? I'll see. Clearly, I'm a writer because I'm so clear with my message when I speak. The film would have been much worse and much more difficult to engage with if Signe hadn't gone into the freezer and done the job herself so that she could write accurately about it.
Do you think that your film falls into the conventional 3-act structure?
Spectacular question.
It is a very good question. It does and it doesn't. You have to know the rules in order to break them. And I did follow the rules as far as how to set up the structure for the movie story for sure. But I think there are ways to break those rules as well, and I didn't break them, but I played with them. So yes, it does conform to a 3-act structure, but there's some flexibility as far as how I attacked that and how I actually structured it. So yes and no to answer your question, I guess.
Yeah. What other movies influenced Below Zero?
I'm a huge Stephen King fan. I've always loved him, and in fact, we tried to get him for a cameo to play the pilot in the plane. Just a little tribute, just a little fun moment. But I'm a huge Stephen King fan. The Shining, Misery. I'm a writer, so I also love stories about writers, and there are so many out there that are fabulous movies. So that's one thing, actually. You have the industry sometimes say, don't write movies about the industry. Well, look at the artist right now. Look at The Shining. Look at Stand By Me. And those are all Stephen King movies. And, I'm not trying to emulate what he does, but I certainly admire his work and find it very thrilling to me as a moviegoer. And I love his movies. I love his books.
I would say that what struck me, I find that in addition to the influences Signe mentioned, which are very, very strong, I think also Barton Fink and adaptation are part of it too, which are a lot about the writing process and what goes on inside a writer's mind while he's trying to put words on the paper.
Mm-hmm.
During the screenplay, sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, take whatever time you need.
Hey, while you're coming up with that question, is that image, that picture on your avatar, is that a face hugger?
It's from Alien, right?
Yeah.
That is awesome.
That's pretty cool.
It's not mine, it's my boyfriend's.
Oh, it's awesome.
Well, tell him it's awesome.
How much similarities are there between you and Jack, other than being a different gender and a writer?
That's a good question. I've had that a couple times, and I'm not really sure how to answer that, because to me it's about a human experience. Jack smokes, I don't. I live in Canada, which is cold, and Jack is from Los Angeles, which isn't. So there's actually quite a few differences just in that basic way. But I think it's really a story about a universal fear, and that's what I wanted to tap into, the things that make us all afraid. What if you were locked in a freezer? What a terrifying concept. And then make it even more terrifying. What if you were accidentally locked in there and there's some psycho outside who's chopping bodies and he doesn't know you're in there and you have to somehow escape but not make him aware that you're in there at the same time. That to me is just such a terrifying concept. And the story really did just kind of grow out of that moment of that single concept of what if you were locked in a meat freezer.
I think part of the fun of writing and part of what helps us grow as writers and as human beings when we write is the ability to explore our darkest impulses without succumbing to them. We've all been faced with a deadline where, whether it's writing or school or whatever else, we've all been faced with a deadline where we just don't think we can make it. And you get tempted to do the wrong thing, buy a paper off the internet or ask a friend to write it for you or something. And most of us don't do it. Almost none of us ever actually do it. But you can explore what would be going on in your mind if you started down. Yoda said it best: once you start down the path of the dark side, forever will it control your destiny. Mm-hmm. And you can explore what it's like to be the sort of writer we all hope we are not when you're writing someone like Jack. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a fun way to sort of see what you're capable of imagining without actually having to do those terrible things. Mm-hmm. And particularly in horror, because there's, people wind up having to pay for their weaknesses in horror and thrillers.
you talked about how you don't smoke. Did you write Jack as a smoker because Eddie smokes? Or was that just...
I should have. No, I didn't. I actually wrote the character as a smoker because there were some. It was useful to some plot devices in the story, and it seemed to work for his character. You know, the fact that he uses the lighter, or actually the woman who's locked in the freezer with him, Kristin Booth's character, uses the lighter to start the fire, and also the fact that it gives him an incentive for the cigarette that's outside the door that he wants, and putting his hand underneath that door. So it was a good device to use, and it worked well with his character. It caused the accident in the first place. So yeah, I guess smoking was an important part of Jack and Frank's character. But just coincidentally, it was also an important part of Eddie's character. So yeah, he's definitely a smoker. And
I would add two things. First of all, smoke looks really great on film.
It does.
Or on digital, whatever, red that we shot it on. But smoke looks really good from an image standpoint. And secondly, when you're writing these man-in-a-box pictures, both on Below Zero and Breakdown Lane, one of the first lessons you learn is that anything you're going to need for any point in the plot, you have to introduce early. Once you're going to lock somebody in a room, you can't have the pizza guy show up with some exposition, or you can't have someone drop their cell phone or something. It's important that you have everything you need. So when Signe knew she needed a fire at a certain point in the script, it's important to have the means to make that fire introduced from the very, very beginning. Otherwise, it seems convoluted. So I read a story once about how when the writers of 24 were putting together a season, they'd always start off by giving Kiefer Sutherland, they'd give Jack a great big duffel bag or something that he'd be carrying around, so that just in case in episode 16 they needed a pencil or a whatever, they'd have something for him to reach in and pull it out of.
Yeah.
And but when you're putting together a 24 episode story arc, it's a lot different than when you're doing an encapsulated story like in a movie. So the challenge is how to make it realistic. And plus, I mean, hopefully when you saw the movie, you got to know Jack a little bit. I mean, that guy's a smoker. Signe wrote a smoker, and to make him a non-smoker would have been untrue to the character.
Yeah. I liked how you lingered on Frank's jacket to set up Gunnar knowing that Frank was there in the movie.
That was our director. That was Justin Thomas Austinson. Yeah, that we wanted, I think the vision he had, I can't comment exactly on it, but I believe the vision that he had there was he was trying to establish the two worlds. So you saw an identical shot that was set up as the movie world, and then you saw an identical shot earlier that was the writer world, so that you could see the difference in the two locations. That's something that we do as writers. We use our experiences and the things around us to influence our stories and the people that we meet. And all of those things make their way into the story. And that's not unlike Jack, our main character, who is trying to write this screenplay and facing writer's block, and essentially looking at all the things in his life and everything around him and using those ingredients to craft into the screenplay. So I think that was just a big part of that, was just using that echo effect, and also it's a tribute to our amazing production designer who took this abandoned slaughterhouse, and turned it from a writer world into a movie world, which had to happen in about 2 days because of our production schedule. It was just an outrageous achievement in my mind.
Yeah, his name's Michael David Carr, and he's an insane genius.
He's brilliant.
What did they use for the pig and the blood that he wrote in?
I'm glad you asked. Go ahead.
Michael David Carr is the production designer that we had working on Below Zero, and he designed that pig. It was one of the first things he did, was he wanted to make this giant life-size pig that is actually bigger than life, and it had to be able to, bleed when it was stabbed, and, have the right texture, and it had to look real. It had to be really convincing. And I think he did an amazing job on that. He used we were very limited with our budget. So it's not like we could go out and rent a pig for, $1,500 a week or whatever it was to buy one.
You would not believe how incredibly expensive it is to rent a fake pig.
That doesn't even look that real, really. Like, we would have had to do a lot of effects to it anyway to make it less shiny and not plastic looking. And so Mike decided to go ahead and build this thing, and he used a swing set that he found in the trash and some plywood, just some lumber that he found that someone had thrown out. And he just, and I think he bought like 30 cents worth of screws and created this amazing looking realistic pig that just kind of blew us all away. I don't think anyone can really, I defy anyone to tell us that the pig does not look real.
If I were Mike, I would have one line on my resume: built a pig out of a swing set. I mean, it's ridiculous that he was able to do that, and functional too. I mean, there was a hollow spot right in the neck where Eddie cuts the throat so that he gets the blood out, and it was accessible by a zipper. So we did take one, Eddie cut the throat, we said reset, and it took literally less than a minute to put a fresh bag of blood in that spot and do it again instead of having to pull the thing apart. It speaks to his brilliance that it looked great, but was also very practical for behind-the-scenes needs as well.
And we now have a pig we can rent out.
Yeah, do you need a pig?
No.
I think there will be a pig in every single one of our movies from now on.
We got to work. Next movie is called The Adventures of the Pig. Elvis, an adventure.
Are you a vegetarian, or did it make you become one?
I'm not vegetarian, but I'm mostly vegetarian, and I was beforehand already. I don't eat a lot of meat. That's just the way I live. But I can't say I'm vegetarian. I just don't happen to eat a lot of meat.
Not me.
I think our entire crew is vegetarian now, except you.
I will rarely eat anything that didn't have a face.
What was the most takes that you did for one shot?
Not bad.
Geez, that is a... How about if I answer that question with an opposite answer? Mm-hmm. I mean, we did a lot of takes of a lot of scenes, but I'll be honest with you, most of them were done very, very quickly. We had Eddie for 11 days to shoot 101 pages. So, I mean, if he and Kristin and Berryman and Sadie, our little girl, the little boy, didn't get it quickly, it really, really put a lot of pressure on our day. The most takes, I think, were the very, very last shot of the movie. It's edited in such a way that you can't tell, but it was done all in one shot where Eddie and Cole walk out of the slaughterhouse with Paige
banging on the
window, and then they cross in front of the camera and then go outside, and you catch them again in the window to the exterior of the slaughterhouse. And I think everyone was like just very excited to wrap. It just coincidentally was the last shot we did of the movie too. So everyone was like messing their lines or laughing or ad-libbing or looking at the camera or whatever, because everyone was very excited. I mean, Eddie and Kristin were getting on a flight to go home that day. Sadie was excited to have her movie done. Justin was excited. I was excited, and so we had to do a lot of takes, and it's so frustrating when you can see the finish line. But the shot that we took the fewest number of takes on, do you want to talk about the cow?
No.
The shot that we took the least number of takes on was the truck hitting the cow scene and crashing into the ditch. The truck, the tow truck we had, the vintage tow truck, was truly vintage, and we needed to do the shot, so we got the stuntman in the truck, and we did one rehearsal, and we had the cows crossing the road, and he hit the brakes, and the brakes froze up. So fortunately, we had a couple mechanics right there, including Gary Kowalchuk, who owned the truck and who we would not have a movie without him. He crawls under the truck and bangs on the brakes and loosens them up. And basically the rule is this: you can drive the truck now, but next time you hit the brakes, that's the last time you hit the brakes. They're going to freeze up for good, and we got to bring it back to the garage and really do a job on them to fix them. So basically, you have one take. And it was, of course, you always get the news that you only have one shot at something when it's the most complicated shot in the entire movie. And this was the case in this one. And our stuntman, Guy Buse, who, let me tell you, you can tell your boyfriend this: never join you on a set of a movie where there's a stuntman, because he's immediately going to feel like his manhood is challenged, because these stuntmen are freaking stuntmen. And so we got the shot in one take. Guy drove through the herd of cows and then hit a cow, then he hit our fake cow, then he hit the ditch, then he flipped it over. And
he did not hit any cows. No cows were hurt during this film. It's all special effects.
Yeah, the only cow that he hit was made of 2x4s, and even that cow didn't make the movie. We digitally inserted an actual cow. But there were no actual cows harmed in any way in this film, unless you count the hamburgers we had for dinner that night. But we didn't know any of those cows. But one take to crash a truck into a cow and into a ditch and flip the truck over, and we're all rushing to. We'll forward you some behind the scenes video on this, but we all rushed to see if Guy's okay, because the scene wasn't written to have the truck flip over, and then we all stop short because we don't want to wreck the shot. And then finally, when they say cut, we run up and see the guy in the truck, and Guy just stands up in the truck and is like, "What's the big deal, man? I just crashed a truck. I do that like 5 times a day." So it was one of the most exciting days ever, and a great shot, but we had to do it in one, and we got it.
And absolutely terrifying too, because my biggest fear when I'm as a producer is that we're just making a movie here. Let's just nobody get hurt, and if that's to me the biggest part of responsibility on the whole movie is just being, especially when you have a limited budget. It's like, how do you keep everyone safe? How do you make sure like it's just a movie? When you get right down to it, it's just a movie, and you just want everyone to be able to do something they're proud of and that's exciting and everything, but you don't want anyone to get hurt. And that was a terrifying day for me, so it's hard to talk about, but man, it turned out so well, and we have an amazing shot because of it, and because of Rory Hines, our editor, who actually did the visual effects of creating that cow being hit by the vehicle. He did a great job.
It looks great.
Good.
About your script writing again, I was curious, as a writer, at what point do you get the feeling that you're ready to submit your script in?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Your question is, at what point do I feel the script is ready?
Yeah.
That's a good question, because again, going back to that quote, I don't think scripts are ever finished. They are abandoned. It gets to a point where you've done rewrite after rewrite. And even now I look at the script and I go, gee, with what, you're constantly evolving yourself as a person, but also your craft as a writer. And I look at the script now and the finished film, and there are so many little things I would tweak and do differently. And, how many times did George Lucas, for example, rewrite Star Wars and do the things. I don't think scripts are ever finished. You get to a point where you get it to the best of your abilities at a certain point, and also it's also time. You've got so many elements that are in motion. You've got a cast showing up and a crew that's ready to go, and there's a huge, massive amount of work that needs to happen to prepare each scene. So all of those things are already underway. And the more you keep writing, and you have to lock a script at a certain point for all the other elements to come together. Would I do changes? Yes, absolutely. But I'm also very proud of this script, and who knows, even if the changes I would make it better. It's really hard to tell, and it also gets subjective at this point too. You just have to do the best you can, write the best movie you possibly can. Share it with people you trust, and reach out to consultants and advisors, and use all the tools that are available to you to make sure you really are writing the best script possible. And then you release it into the world. And that's where we are now.
Yeah, I think writers in general miss that point where they need to give the script to other people to comment on, because as a general rule, I think that when we read our own scripts, we don't read what we wrote, we read what we meant to write. And it's difficult to get past that when you're reading your own script. You can't come at something with a fresh eye that you created in the first place. In the same way that, someone's mother will always love them and support them no matter what terrible thing they do, we do that to our scripts. And so it's important that you get it out there and get feedback at the script stage, because once you're shooting the movie, it's difficult to make wholesale changes. I mean, the movie itself is going to demand some changes, but but you can't say, you know what, instead of a zombie, I think we should make it Frankenstein. Actually, that's a great idea. But so Signe's right. You need to get the script out there to other people, and then take another pass with their thoughts in mind. And then eventually the calendar and the clock is going to determine when the script is finished.
I did review your movie and I posted it on IMDb, but I was wondering, do you read any of your reviews, and do you ever take in much of it? Because a lot of them...
We do read a lot of the reviews, but the truth is we're also so busy making movies and trying to get this one out there and dealing with distributors and sales agents and everything, the mountain of workload that comes with all of that. So yeah, it's important, I think, to read those reviews, but I think what's also important is read those reviews, but also have confidence in your ability. And sometimes you hit right on, sometimes you miss, but you've got to use those reviews, I think, to just kind of almost verify against what you already know. And you can't take them to heart. You have to, if there's negative ones out there, and even the positive ones, you can't take it to heart. You have to learn from each of them and see what you think is valid and use that against your own experience.
Where will you be filming Breakdown Lane?
Shooting Breakdown Lane in Drumheller, Alberta. I'd recommend anyone who wants to be an independent filmmaker to shoot in Alberta. It's just a tremendous place, and the film offices and the local communities and everything have all been extremely supportive on both Below Zero and Breakdown Lane. And plus, Alberta has everything. If you need mountains, if you need desert, if you need seaside, if you need prairie, if you need a soundstage, and their crews are tremendous as well. I was very fortunate to team up with a producing partner who's from Alberta and had all those connections, but I would never shoot anywhere else if I had a choice in the matter. Don't get me wrong. If someone says, come to Hawaii and shoot a movie, what am I going to say? No, I'm not going to Hawaii. But but my choice is to find a place in Alberta first and foremost. It's a tremendous place to shoot your independent film with great film communities, both behind and in front of the camera.
How did you raise all the money for the film budget for Below Zero?
We had a combination of tax credits, provincial funding, and private investment that we used towards the film. It was, of course, never enough, but we did the best we could with what we had. And, making a low-budget movie with a $1.2 million budget is really not that low-budget a filmmaking experience. Mm-hmm. There was, for this project in particular, just because it sounds like it should be pretty achievable, a guy locked in a meat freezer. But, when you talk about stars and you talk about, we had a crew of about 30-ish people, 35 people, I think, total. And, that's breakfast, lunch, and dinner during our prep, during our production, during our wrap. That is, you need the gear for 18 solid days, but you need it a little bit longer because you're shooting at a location that isn't a main center. There's the accommodation for everyone. So even though we were able to negotiate great rates on everything, it's still very expensive to shoot a film like this in a remote location with stars and to give it the production qualities that we were trying to achieve. So, 1.2 million is still considered a low budget film, but I think it's a higher budget than most indies, unfortunately, are able to shoot with.
Yeah, we made a commitment to each other that we were gonna make a movie that had named stars and that we could sell around the world and so on. And if that meant working a little bit harder to raise the funding, then that's what we were going to do. The last thing we wanted to do was work really, really hard to make a movie and then just have the only people who see it be our moms.
Yeah, and something that was important to us too is, like Bob said, you can make a movie and sell it internationally and have success with it with non-star talent, but it's much, much more difficult. And that was important to us. We really wanted to make sure that we put every penny on the screen and that we gave it its best chances of selling. Shooting with star talent, like Eddie Furlong, like Michael Berryman, like Kristin Booth, fabulous talent. And also we did things like, we slept in a slaughterhouse, not just us, like our crew. There were a lot of, our production designer slept there. A lot of his crew slept there. It was grueling. It really was a grueling, tough shoot to achieve what we did in such a short time period. But we did it. Bottom line, we did it. And, the nice thing about having a slaughterhouse with a whole bunch of freezers means that, for example, your catering budget, you can make a lot of freezer food and take it out and thaw it every day and make fresh salads and buns to go with it. And we had an amazing community of people that would help to do all these things. This Kowalczyk family we've mentioned that live in Edson just completely stepped to the table and helped with so many of those things, and we're forever grateful to them. So, it was a great experience, and I'd love to shoot in Edson again.
When we watched the movie, when Signe and I watched the movie, we're watching the movie, but we were also saying, hey, look, that freezer is the one that all the props were in. Hey, that freezer is where all of our dinners were in. That freezer is where we kept all of the, where the editing bay was. And there's an editor right behind that door now.
Yeah.
You tend to remember the stuff that isn't necessarily on camera, but which we were able to make use of the space to sort of limit our budget. We have a bigger budget than most indies do, but I think one thing that we are exceptionally good at, if I may pat ourselves on the back, is making sure that every single penny that is in the movie is on the screen.
That's right.
We didn't go to fancy dinners. Signe and I didn't get massive suites at some fancy schmancy hotel and then ask everyone else to sleep on the street. It was very important to us to lead by example and to make sure that everyone who trusted us with money or time or their talent or their work saw that we were willing to do what we were asking them to do, and that it all went towards making the movie better instead of just making us more comfortable.
What is Pitchfest, and where is it, and how do you get involved?
Okay. The Great American Pitchfest is a 3-day conference held in June every year, and it works so that, the first night, the Friday night, is generally a master class. The Saturday consists of master classes and then about 20 free classes. Anyone can go. The Sunday is the Pitchfest, and the Pitchfest is kind of the crown jewel of the whole event. How it works is basically we invite about 120 executives to hear pitches, and you sit down and you pitch your script to these agents, managers, and production companies that are looking for material. So it's a 3-day conference, and we hold it every year in June. It's the largest screenwriting conference in Los Angeles now, and it's a pretty amazing thing and something we're very proud of.
Thank you for your time. And is there anything else that you would like to say?
Well, about the screenwriting conference, I just want to emphasize, anyone can go. It's completely free on the Saturday. So if you have any interest in learning about screenwriting, feel free to come out and check it out. It's in Los Angeles, and it'll be June 1st to 3rd, 2012 this year, and first weekend in June next year as well. The only other thing I wanted to add was just if you're interested in screenwriting, in addition to going to the conference, go to those free classes. There's no catch whatsoever. But in addition to that, when the DVD comes out, you may want to check that out as well. Like try to pick up a copy, because we're going to have lots of extras, especially for other writers, that are trying to learn their craft, learn how to do what we've done. And I think it'll be really helpful and interesting for if you have a script or you have any interest in screenwriting whatsoever.
I just want to add that we have a new and exciting poster for our movie. You can find that, you'll be able to find that on the website just as soon as I update it today, as well as a brand new and exciting trailer, which is great. And I'm going to be updating the site today also with when our upcoming screenings are at festivals around the country and around the world. So anyone listening, or you guys, or if you blog or whatever, please just put out the word to visit belowzeromovie.com or like us on our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/belowzeromovie.
And the Pitchfest is pitchfest.com.
Will it have a theatrical release?
We're still negotiating that. We'll see, but for right now, the best chance to see it on the big screen is going to be to go to a festival where we're at.
And we're screening all across the country. I think we have 6 festivals in 2 weeks coming up, like in March and April. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We can't wait to get out there and start sharing this with the audiences who've been so patient about seeing the movie. We're really excited about sharing it with everyone.
It's going to be an exciting time. We're going to be at a festival in Scotland, and then we're flying back to the U.S. to do a festival in Connecticut, and then we're going right to Drumheller to shoot the movie, and then we're going to a festival in California, and then we're doing Pitchfest. So pretty much if you want to mail Signe or I anything over the course of March or April, it's much better just to jot down my license plate number than it would be to get any sort of street address.
I'll be letting everyone on Twitter know about all your information and where they can find Below Zero.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate any help getting the word out. When you're a 2-person production company, the help of the fans and help of people in the press like yourself and so on just really, really make our job a lot easier. We really appreciate it. Appreciate the effort.
Thank you, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
All right, we'll see you again soon, we hope.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.